To set the stage, let's talk about the Drektar Dominion. They're notorious across the galaxy for their relentless expansion and brutality. What makes the Drektar so fundamentally different from other spacefaring civilizations?
It's their core philosophy. Drektar society venerates conquest as the highest virtue. Where other species value diplomacy or commerce, Drektar see only dominance or subjugation. Their political doctrine is rooted in the belief that fear is the purest form of control.
So, their approach to foreign relations is essentially a zero-sum game. How does that shape their interactions with emerging species like humanity?
They interpret attempts at cooperation as weakness. For example, when humans approached with open dialogue, Drektar leadership viewed it as an invitation to conquer, not collaborate. This mindset leaves no room for trust or negotiation, only for intimidation or destruction.
Let's shift focus to humanity's entry onto the galactic stage. They arrived seeking alliances and mutual understanding. How did other species and the Drektar react to this approach?
Most species welcomed humanity's curiosity and willingness to cooperate. However, the Drektar saw any gesture of peace as naivete. Despite warnings from experienced neighbors, humans believed that rational dialogue could bridge any cultural gap.
It's almost reminiscent of early European explorers encountering unfamiliar civilizations sometimes, with disastrous results.
Absolutely. History shows that when two fundamentally different worldviews collide, misunderstanding and tragedy often follow. Humanity's optimism was inspiring, but against Drektar aggression, it proved tragically vulnerable.
The destruction of Farpoint stands as a chilling turning point. What exactly happened during the Drektar assault, and why was it so devastating?
Farpoint was more than a colony, it symbolized hope and interstellar unity. The Drektar's attack was swift and merciless. Planetary shields fell in minutes, civilians were executed publicly, and the massacre was broadcast galaxy-wide to humiliate humanity.
It's psychological warfare as much as physical. They wanted not just to defeat, but to send a message.
Exactly. By televising the atrocity, the Drektar weaponized fear, hoping to deter resistance across the galaxy. It was less a battle and more a deliberate display of annihilation.
In the aftermath, the United Terran Council faced an unprecedented dilemma. What options were on the table, and what risks did each pose?
The Council debated between launching a full-scale war, which could have triggered humanity's extinction, or negotiating from a position of weakness. Some argued for surrender, others for all-out retaliation. The risks were existential on both sides.
It's a classic security dilemma. Escalate and risk mutual destruction, or submit and lose autonomy.
And the Drektar's history showed they excelled at crushing defiance. The Council's paralysis reflected the enormous stakes and uncertainty facing humanity.
Amid this deadlock, a mysterious figure emerged: the Hitman. Who is he, and why did the Council authorize such an unconventional response?
The Hitman is more myth than man, known only by a code name and a flawless record. He specializes in operations no army could achieve, ending wars before they start, eliminating threats with surgical precision. The Council saw in him a third option: asymmetric retribution.
So rather than confronting the Drektar head-on, they chose to strike at their psychological and operational core.
Exactly. The Hitman's deployment was both a tactical and symbolic move, showing the galaxy that humanity could respond in ways the Drektar couldn't anticipate or counter.
Soon after, Drektar space began experiencing mysterious disruptions. What tactics did the Hitman employ, and how did the Drektar initially interpret these events?
He used classic guerrilla strategies, infusing them with advanced tech, sabotaging supply lines, triggering explosions, and sowing confusion. The initial Drektar reaction was dismissive. They saw a lone assassin as a symbolic nuisance, not a real threat.
But that changed once the scale and precision of the attacks became undeniable, right?
Absolutely. Survivors' testimonies described an invisible force dismantling entire garrisons. The Drektar's overconfidence quickly gave way to paranoia and fear as they realized this was no ordinary enemy.
Let's delve into the psychological dimension. How did the Hitman's campaign transform the Drektar's own weapon fear against them?
Perfect inversion. The Drektar built their empire on spreading terror, but now their soldiers feared the shadows. Bases were abandoned, commanders executed for failure, and even elite squads fell to unseen attacks. The Hitman made Drektar warlords fear each other as much as their enemy.
It's almost as if he rewrote their cultural script, exposing the vulnerability behind their bluster.
Exactly. Where the Drektar once used fear to control, the Hitman transformed it into a destabilizing force, fracturing their unity and morale from within.
Another fascinating angle is the Hitman's mastery of Drektar technology. How did he use their own advances against them?
He was a technological chameleon, capturing Drektar cloaking devices, hacking security protocols, and weaponizing genetic scanners to bypass defenses. Each adaptation magnified the Drektar's sense of helplessness, showing that their superiority could be subverted.
It's reminiscent of cybersecurity, where insiders turn systems against their creators. Did this technological edge reshape the balance of power?
Absolutely. It wasn't just brute force, it was psychological warfare through technological mastery, making the Drektar question the reliability of their own infrastructure.
While the Drektar reeled, the rest of the galaxy watched closely. How did the Hitman's actions alter humanity's reputation among other species?
Initially, humans were seen as idealists, perhaps even naive. After the Hitman's campaign, that view changed dramatically. Observers realized humanity could wield force with a precision and resolve few imagined. The mythos of the Hitman became a warning: provoke humans at your peril.
So, the lesson wasn't just for the Drektorate reshape interstellar politics.
Exactly. Alliances shifted, and even former skeptics began to see humanity as unpredictable and formidable species not to be underestimated.
To wrap up, let's discuss the broader implications. What does the Hitman's campaign teach us about modern conflict and the psychology of war?
It's a case study in asymmetric warfare, how a single operative, leveraging fear, technology, and unpredictability, can destabilize an empire. The Hitman's actions demonstrate that victory doesn't always require overwhelming force, but rather the ability to attack the mind and the will of the enemy.
In essence, he proved that the most powerful weapon isn't a fleet, but the capacity to reshape an adversary's reality.
Precisely. His legacy isn't just about retribution for Farpoint, but a profound warning. Underestimating the resolve and ingenuity of the weak can be the gravest mistake of all.
Welcome to Galactic Shadows. Today, we unravel the Drektar Dominion's crisis when they awakened a mysterious enemy. Dr. Sato, how did the Drektar initially respond to this unprecedented threat?
The Drektar's first reaction was classic overkill, deploying assassins, entire fleets, and sensor networks across hundreds of star systems. They layered security in ways that contradicted their own warlord culture, showing just how desperate they were.
It's interesting how their approach relied on brute force and surveillance, yet none of it seemed effective. Why did these traditional measures fail so spectacularly?
Their methods were rigid, assuming the enemy would act predictably. But the Hitman was dynamic, adapting faster than Drektar command structures could process. It's like trying to catch smoke with a net. The moment you think you've contained it, it slips through your fingers.
Let's dig deeper. The Hitman's rapid adaptation stands out. How did he manage to stay ahead of Drektar countermeasures, sometimes even turning their own strategies against them?
He exploited Drektar arrogance and predictability. When convoys rerouted to avoid him, he predicted their safe zones and struck there. Traps baited with battalions vanished before they could activate. The Hitman's tactics reflect classic asymmetric warfare: agility over mass.
So, it's less about numbers and more about anticipating psychology and patterns. Can we compare this to any historical human conflicts?
Absolutely. Think of guerrilla warfare during the Vietnam War's mall, adaptive units outmaneuvering a larger force. The Hitman's approach maximizes uncertainty and paralyzes decision-making.
Transitioning from tactics to psychology, the Hitman's campaign soon became psychological as much as physical. How did this affect Drektar morale on the front lines?
Fear became omnipresent. The Drektar feared empty space itself. Ships would disappear without warning. Messages etched in personal war scripts appeared on consoles, targeting individual warlords' fears. The enemy wasn't just attacking logistics, he was attacking the Drektar psyche.
That level of psychological targeting must have been devastating. Are there studies or examples from military history illustrating the impact of such personal, psychological warfare?
The closest parallel is perhaps the use of targeted propaganda in WWII, but the Hitman's methods are more intimate. By referencing private histories, he created a sense of inescapable, personalized dread like a ghost, haunting every command decision.
Let's talk logistics. The Hitman systematically dismantled Drektar supply lines. How did these actions cripple the Drektar's ability to wage war?
He targeted critical nodes, fuel depots detonated before resupply, factories sabotaged at peak output, ammunition primed to explode. It's akin to cutting the arteries of a living organism. No matter how much muscle you have, without supply, you're paralyzed.
Did this result in any measurable shifts in Drektar operational capacity?
Absolutely. Reports indicate entire fleets stranded, war engines powerless, and soldiers abandoning posts out of terror. Drektar production capacity plummeted, and their war engines literally ground to a halt in empty space.
As the campaign escalated, the Hitman introduced psychological operations and information warfare. In what ways did he manipulate Drektar communications and command structures?
He broadcasted troop movements in distorted Drektar dialects, sowed paranoia, and forced warlords to execute their own intelligence officers. Encryption rotated daily, yet he always stayed ahead. It's similar to cyber warfare today. Once an adversary doubts their own systems, trust collapses.
Were there any unintended consequences of this paranoia within Drektar ranks?
Definitely. The Drektar began cannibalizing their own leadership, with commanders isolating themselves and executing subordinates. Their own fear became an accelerant for systemic collapse.
What about the technical side? The Hitman bypassed advanced Drektar secure biometric locks, neural implants. How did he overcome safeguards designed to be impenetrable?
He exploited inherent weaknesses in Drektar technology, reverse engineering biometric data, hijacking neural pathways, and rerouting life support. It's like a hacker not just stealing passwords, but rewriting the rules of access itself.
Were Drektar security innovations effective at all, or did they inadvertently aid the Hitman?
Ironically, each new security layer became another vulnerability. The more complex their defenses, the more entry points for the Hitman's infiltration. It's a classic case of overcomplicating a system and making it less secure.
Moving from technology to societal effects, what happened as Drektar warriors and commanders began deserting and surrendering en masse, even to former enemies?
A complete breakdown of discipline and cohesion set in. Drektar warriors, once proud, now begged for asylum. Commanders were executed for failing to stop the Hitman, but that only fueled more desertion. The psychological contagion was unstoppable.
Are there historical examples where elite forces surrendered to less powerful groups due to psychological collapse?
Certainly the collapse of the Roman legions against Hannibal at Cannae, or more recently, certain Soviet units in WWIE. Psychological defeat often precedes material defeat.
Let's broaden the lens. How did galactic powers respond as they witnessed the Drektar's unraveling?
Observers who had dismissed humanity now watched in awe and fear. They saw not just military brilliance, but the total dismantling of Drektar power without conquest. Quiet diplomatic overtures began, with former predators now seeking alliances with humans.
So, the campaign reshaped political realities galaxy-wide. How significant was this shift in terms of galactic balance of power?
It was seismic. Entire sectors realigned, with species reevaluating humanity as a force capable of ending empires through asymmetric means rather than brute force.
Returning to the battlefield, the Hitman's tactics grew more sophisticated, even introducing biological agents. How did this compound the Drektar's crisis?
He weaponized Drektar-specific pathogens, engineering artificial famines and medical chaos. Frontline units starved, and medical staff refused their roles out of fear. It's a multi-vector attack, physical, biological, and psychological all at once.
Is there any precedent for this kind of multi-domain warfare?
Modern conflicts, like cyber attacks, combined with economic sanctions, echo this approach. But the Hitman's campaign was more integrated, turning Drektar strengths like biological uniqueness into vulnerabilities.
As the Drektar Dominion structure fractured, what were the final stages of their collapse?
Internal purges began executing suspected collaborators, erasing entire families. The Hitman infiltrated diplomatic archives, eroding trust and creating political vacuums. Outposts became isolated relics, and Drektar identity itself unraveled.
How did this total collapse affect Drektar leadership and their remaining warlords?
Warlords devolved into paranoia, sometimes believing the Hitman was a supernatural Forsaea living curse. Even their last resorts, such as artificial intelligence and hunter-killer teams, were turned against them. The idea of Drektar invincibility was shattered, possibly forever.